We should talk about the Kentucky Wildcats and the Ole Miss Rebels. They played a college football game on Saturday.
And it was a very college football game, too. I mean, it had all of the...
It had everything.
It had all the college football things.
Ole Miss jumped out to a 7-0 lead with a 6-play, 83-yard, 2-minute, 5-second drive that was capped by a 1-yard rushing touchdown by Henry Parrish. I would say that all three of us would have guessed that Ole Miss would have scored on their opening drive of the game because that's what Ole Miss does under Lane Kiffin. They score on the opening drive of the game. I don't know that there is a team in college football that scripts better than Ole Miss does. But, as Lane Kiffin said today, they pay Mark Stoops a lot of money and they've got iPads too. And Kentucky made adjustments. The next points came when Kentucky kicked a field goal to make it 7-3. And then with 27 seconds to go in the half, Dane Key caught a 5-yard touchdown pass from Brock Vandegrift. Halftime score, Cats 10, Rebs 7. Kentucky got the ball to start the second half. Ole Miss forced a 3-and-out. Rebels got the ball, 10-play, 51-yard drive, 31-yard field goal from Caden Davis, 10 apiece. Kentucky retook the lead with a 48-yard field goal with 6.5 to go in the third quarter. That was on the very next drive, back in front, 13-10. 10 seconds left in the third quarter. Ole Miss, 6 plays, 61 yards, 2 minutes and a second, 48-yard touchdown to Trey Harris. Made some beautiful moves in the open field. Rebs in front, 17-13, and it felt like a momentum shift. It was a false feeling. There was one more score in the game. It was a 2-yard rushing touchdown on a fumble recovery for Kentucky to go in front 20-17. Obviously, the big play in that drive was the 4th and 7 from deep in their own territory with 3 minutes and change to play, in which Vandegrift hit Barryon Brown for a 67-yard gain, I think it was. 67, is that right? Where is it?
I think it was 67.
63.
63.
63-yard pass play got Kentucky down close. They were able to stick it into the end zone, and Ole Miss got the ball back. They were driving at the end, tried to kick a field goal with 48 seconds remaining. If it had been a 15-yard field goal, I'm not sure it would have been inside the left upright. The problem is it was a 48-yard field goal attempt, and it missed by, I don't know, Batesville, give or take.
Something.
I was just thinking about the direction it was going.
That.
I was like, Batesville west of Oxford. I mean, just complete snap hook, never had a chance.
Yeah.
That's a guy who's made some big kicks in his career, too.
Mm-hmm. Looked like me off the tee.
You shouldn't have been in that spot to begin with. Is it fair to say that I think it's more interesting what didn't happen in the game than what did? And here's what I mean by that. Tight ends, both Prieskorn and Wright, had a combined 1 target, and it was on a desperation heave on 4th and long on the final possession of the game. Jordan Watkins was not targeted 1 time. 0 targets for Jordan Watkins. Juice Wells was targeted twice. You had Caden Lee, who was targeted twice, and I know Lane Kiffin addressed that today, made a Michael Jordan comparison with Trey Harris, but there was no... And especially when they were struggling at times to run the football. Now, Parrish averaged 5 per carry. That is certainly not a bad day running the football, but there was no jet motion. There was no moving the pocket to try to get your quarterback away from pressure to have or allow an easy throw. There was very little offensive creativity. And now some of that has to do with the fact that the quarterback played poorly. Jackson Dart had a bad day. The numbers do not tell the story about Jackson Dart's day. He was bad on Saturday. And also Kentucky does, they coach and they play too. But something that you have seen over the years with the Lane Kiffin coached Ole Miss team is the ability to scheme guys open using the middle of the field, using guys like Watkins and the tight ends to create separation and scheme guys open through creativity, and it felt like there was none of that on Saturday. And the thing that surprises me the most in the game is not necessarily that they struggled offensively, it's that Kentucky was able to double up Ole Miss in time of possession, and I think the style of game knocked Lane Kiffin off of his game, and I'm speaking of 2 specific instances. They had 4th and short near midfield, where a first down probably wins the game for Ole Miss if they go for it and get it. Now, they went for it on 4th down earlier in the game, and it led to a touchdown. one of a slant to Harris, one of the few times they actually tested the middle of the field in a quick pass, and it goes for a touchdown. And instead, Lane Kiffin punted the football on 4th and short twice near midfield. And that is very out of character for what you've come to expect from Lane Kiffin, which is creativity and aggressiveness. And the offensive plan on Saturday, whether it be a result of just scheme and not having a good plan, or a combination of not having a good plan and not having great quarterback play and at times not being good up front, doesn't matter. What you've come to expect from Lane Kiffin, offensive creativity, game planning, scheming guys open, and aggressiveness, was not what you can say about their offensive performance on Saturday. They scored 10 points in the final 58 minutes of the football game. You're not winning when you do that.
I will admit that watching a game on an iPad, and I guess I'll admit to this, watching most of the first half while driving and watching the second half on an iPad sitting in the press box.
It's the worst.
Is not the ideal way to really have like the best feeling for how a game played out. Like it was hard to like really lock in on the game. But from that perspective, there were, I don't know, 3 or 4 things that looked. I thought Ole Miss looked flat. And when I say flat, it's like, and I don't know that this was the case. I don't know if they had a good week of preparation or a bad week of preparation, but it had the look, without being behind the scenes, of they knew they were overall more talented than Kentucky. They knew they had scored a bunch of points. And frankly, everything has come easy for this team so far this season. And it looked like they were just going to roll out into a conference game and things were going to come easy, and they didn't. And I thought they looked flat. And Borky used a couple of the words that came to mind a second ago. I thought the offensive game plan, there were 2 things. One, I thought it was a conservative game plan. The whole hitch route. I know it's an extension of the running game. I know that you're trying to loosen the defense up, whatever. It's just doing the same thing. If you're doing the same thing over and over and having success with it, okay, that's one thing. But Ole Miss did the same thing over and over and over and went 1 of 10 on 3rd down. And so they weren't necessarily having that much success. I also think there are better ways to use Trey Harris than just throw it to him and say, hey, go get me 7 yards. He's one of the most gifted route runners that you have in college football. He has amazing hands and incredible speed in the open field. Get him down the field. Drag him across the middle. Jordan Watkins has always been good catching balls. So I thought it was a conservative game plan, 1. And 2, I, like you said, Borky, thought it lacked creativity. If you are having trouble moving guys up front, then you got to figure out a way to either get around them or make them move because of what you are doing with formations. Got to figure out a way. And Ole Miss did not figure out a way to make things happen on. Ole Miss game versus Kentucky reminded me of the 2015 team. Number 13 Ole Miss lost to Memphis 37-24. It was an 11 a.m. game too. Who could forget that one? Didn't Robert Kimdichie get knocked out cold playing running back?
He did. Yeah, he did. Paxton Lynch in Memphis.
Who was good. Memphis had some dudes on that team, but still. So, yeah, there are fans after losses get frustrated, right? We've seen that before. But I think some of what you have seen online is a reminder that when people have their dollars tied to something and it doesn't go well, they're mad. Saw a lot of social media posts, message board posts where, hey, we've invested in this team and this is poor. This is unacceptable. This is I just would remind you that it is still college football. And I don't think this staff did anything different than they do in a normal week in terms of preparation. I think they put together what they thought was a good plan. The opponent in Kentucky put together what was a better plan. Ole Miss did make a little bit of an adjustment in the second half and ran the football better. I thought more than anything, Ole Miss was better defensively in the second half than they were in the first half. They were able to get off the field a little bit better. But it did not feel like there was a significant offensive adjustment, and that is magnified when your number of possessions is reduced. Right? When one team controls the clock and slows down the game and takes the ability of a fast-tempo team away and limits their possessions, the number of opportunities that you have to make adjustments is lessened. Like you can't just kind of figure it out on the fly. And the importance of making whatever changes you need to do based on what the opponent is doing defensively is magnified. Let's see. I think I've got it right here. The drive chart in this game for Ole Miss offensively. How many possessions they had? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, they had 11 possessions in the game.
Yeah.
That's enough time to make adjustments. Here's how they finished. Touchdown, punt, halftime. Field goal, fumble, touchdown, punt, missed field goal. And that fumble was huge.
It was in the red zone.
It was in the red zone, but it was at a point where Ole Miss had kicked a field goal, and even though it didn't immediately lead to points for Kentucky, it kept points from going on the board for Ole Miss. And if they had been able to put points on the board there, because remember, Ole Miss scored on its next drive also. You would have had 3 consecutive possessions where you had put points on the board, and it feels like momentum would have kind of gotten going a little bit, and you would have felt differently about it. And like ball rolls downhill.
They made a lot of mistakes on Saturday. And so, earlier talked about the game plan. In the postgame, I talked a lot about coaching. And I think that Mark Stoops outcoached Lane Kiffin on Saturday. But also, you had – in this, it all falls at the feet of the head coach anyway because it's his players that he's coaching. Dart had a bad day. And a couple of things. Took a really bad sack. I know it's the final possession, but took a really bad sack that knocked him out of field goal range. Missed a couple of deep balls early that would have changed things if he'd have put them on target. Receivers were open.
Opportunities to run late where it made sense for him to run, and he didn't. And then there was one where he did run where the only right play was to take a shot at the end zone when you had Kentucky jump into the neutral zone.
Right, and he fumbled, and it got taken off the board. But you get a free play, and you instead take a hit as opposed to throwing the ball to the end zone. You had the Harris fumble that you mentioned. That was a killer as well. And then there's other little things like Ole Miss's front six. If you're looking for a positive from the game Saturday, the front six is really good. And I kept seeing people say, well, they didn't have a consistent pass rush. Well, I mean, this is SEC football. You're not going to sack the quarterback every drop back. They had 5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss and held Kentucky to 2 yards per carry. That is a really good day for a defensive front. But the back end of the defense is a problem. Not only penalties where, and a couple of them, the ball was poorly thrown. It would have been an incomplete pass if you just don't grab jersey. But if you're going to grab jersey and expose shoulder pad, it's a penalty. Even if it's soft, if you're grabbing jersey and shoulder pad is showing when you're doing it, you're getting a flag. And that extended Kentucky drives. But little things like, I think Kentucky had a 3rd and 16, I believe, in the second half, out of field goal range. And Ole Miss got the stop, but a missed tackle on a little quick hitter led to Kentucky getting into field goal range and 3 points. So little things like that Ole Miss did poorly throughout the game led to a loss. The back end of the defense is mistake prone. They didn't get beat in terms of like guys running past them, but when they're forcing incompletions, they're tugging on jerseys or they're missing tackles in space that immediately lead to points. A lot of issues there in the back end of the defense as well. Offense wasn't the only problem. Back end of the defense is a problem too.
Conversation.
I agree with that, but I wanted to let me ask y'all some questions because y'all got a little bit more insight, obviously, than me on this. You talked about Kiffin's game plan being conservative, being different. Why?
He did not appreciate the armchair quarterbacking in his press conference today. We'll play it tomorrow. He did not like that.
I'll get over it.
That's right. You make $10 million to do it. Part of me wondered if they thought that they could win that way.
Well, clearly they thought they could win that way.
Like,
that's why they built the plan the way. I think what they thought was they were going to have trouble running the ball inside, and by getting the ball quickly to the perimeter with Trey Harris, they might could loosen things up a little bit on the inside. Kentucky tackled well.
They did, but it's still a mystery why. I mean, you've got Juice Wells, and I know he had a drop. He had 2 targets. One was a little quick hitter, and one was a deep ball into coverage that was thrown behind him. But South Carolina used him so creatively. And Lane Kiffin has used weapons so creatively, but not Saturday.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. Was all offseason we talked about this Ole Miss wide receiver room and how deep it was and how many playmakers there are. And right now it looks like Trey Harris and the Harris heirs out there. I mean, it's just him. He had 11 catches. Nobody else is getting the ball. Why?
I don't know. I don't know if there's like a fall in love with the best player thing. Now, Lane Kiffin did say today, who do you take the touches away from? Because if you only get Trey Harris 5 touches a game, are you doing things the right way there? I don't know that anybody is suggesting that Trey Harris should necessarily get fewer touches, but I think you got to come up with different ways to get him the ball, and it becomes easy. You remember one of the conversations we had throughout the offseason was you're going to cause defenses to have to make a choice. If you have 2 legitimate number ones at receiver, you can't take away everything. Alabama dealt with this, or Georgia, I should say, dealt with this on Saturday night. Do you want to take away Ryan Williams, or do you want to take away Jalen Milroe? But Kirby Smart talked about afterward, and there's Joel Klatt was on the next round and had a really, really long, interesting answer to kind of what Kirby was talking about. But basically what he's saying is you can't spy the quarterback and double Ryan Williams. You just don't have enough personnel to do that. And so how do you cover it? Well, Ole Miss has got to figure out a way to put defenses in a similar situation. You can't take away Trey Harris and Juice Wells. And if you do allocate the personnel to take away both of those guys, then you have to make the defense pay, 1, with your running game, and 2, by utilizing the other pieces that are not being taken away, like Jordan Watkins and Caden Priestcorn and Caden Lee.
All right.
So I honestly don't understand why you say, okay, we're going to force it to this guy, period, end of sentence. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do.
Why isn't Bentley playing?
And at this point, the answers are not adequate.
It's not physical. It can't be.
Well,
they would just put him on the injury report.
So what have we heard over and over? We've heard, well, he just got beaten, right? He got beaten out by Parrish, and he got beaten out by Matt Jones. This would be my counter to that. You have seen what he is capable of in Southeastern Conference games. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe he got beaten out on the practice field. The running game, Parrish has been good. He hasn't been great, but he's been good.
And he had 5 per carry against Kentucky's defensive front. That's a good day.
But how many legitimate, running plays did they run to?
So he had 13 carries, so almost 70 yards.
Yeah.
Okay. The issue arises when he's not on the field. Or, because I had talked about this in the postgame and then the second podcast over the weekend. I've talked about this game twice already. But a couple of the listeners were, well, he only had 3 carries. Talking about Parrish's backup, the number 2 running back. I don't like calling out an individual player who's done everything right and is a great story, betting on himself, walk on, all that.
You're talking about Matt Jones.
Matt Jones.
I mean, he's averaging 6.3 carries with 3 touchdowns for the year.
But not against Kentucky.
That's right.
And the 3 carries that he got, there is clear he is not as explosive as an SEC running back needs to be. And also, Parrish, after he gets banged up, stayed in the game. He was hobbling, and he stayed in the game. And if truly Ulysses Bentley is not able to help them in those situations, then why? And like you said, we've seen him perform in the SEC before. And some people have said, well, he gained too much weight in the offseason. Well, then why is he returning kicks? Yeah. Well, he's in the doghouse. Well, why is he on the field at all? And at some point, I mean, you've had players get arrested and not have 4 games of not playing after their arrest. So the doghouse thing doesn't really track either. You have a hyper-explosive player in a moment where your starting running back, who's playing well, gets hurt to some degree, and his backup is a walk-on that doesn't have it against a legitimate SEC defense, and Bentley can't get a touch, not one in that spot. The answer that Kiffin gave today is not acceptable. Now, it's the only one you're going to get. It's the only one you're ever going to get, but it doesn't actually answer the question of why this guy cannot help you at all.
Agreed.
Are you missing Judkins?
They are missing Judkins.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like, we were talking.
But they shouldn't have needed Judkins to win Saturday.
But Judkins, if you have Judkins, you win, right?
Probably.
I would, yeah.
So it's like I saw something like Auburn was saying that Cam Ward's NIL offer was just ridiculous and too high. And all I was thinking is like, you would be winning the SEC if you had Cam Ward at Auburn right now. They have enough talent everywhere else.
Yeah, let's not go crazy.
Well, I'm just saying that's a huge difference for them.
Huge difference.
If you're this close to the playoff, if you're this close to maybe winning a national championship, don't you just got to kind of suck it up and say, that guy's the best player on the team. We're going to have to pay him.
I mean,
but last year's Bentley wins the game.
I mean, but he's not getting the ball.
Yeah, but
exactly.
But hold on a second. Hold on a second on the Judkins thing. Look, is the entire story about that ever going to come out? Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
No.
But Ole Miss has taken a very business-like approach to the way that it manages its roster and its NIL dollars. And we see it in professional sports, and I know that college is not completely professional sports, but sometimes you have to make a business decision to move on from someone. And Ole Miss made ultimately that decision. Whether it's the right decision or not, but you can debate it all day long.
This feels like Ole Miss tried to moneyball the running back position, but it's the teams that spend that win titles.
Well, but you can't accuse Ole Miss of not spending.
That's true, but we were making jokes
about $15 million.
We were making jokes about how many running backs they were signing. I was like, they're going to make the whole team out of running backs, and it's Bentley or it's Parrish and a walk-on. Where is Rashad Amos? Is he just not ever going to play?
I mean, was that – and that goes back to what I was saying. There's no good answer because, well, he was bad evaluation. Well, whose fault is that? I mean, that is exclusively on your shoulders as well. A guy that was a 1,000-plus yard rusher.
Hold on a second now. Through 5 games, Henry Parrish is averaging 7 yards a carry and has scored 8 touchdowns. He's been
playing well.
Him starting is totally acceptable.
Not a problem.
Not a problem.
But where are the other guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
That you spent money on.
Ulysses Bentley has 16 carries, almost exclusively in garbage time, with no touchdowns and an average of 3.9 yards per carry. I do think there's one more question that's worth asking. Has anything changed big picture for Ole Miss?
Not if they win the next 2 weeks.
Not if they win they can only lose one more. They can lose to Georgia.
I would agree with that.
That's it, though.
That's it.
Not with the schedule they're playing, they're not getting there with 3 losses.
Right.
The margin for error is much smaller. That has changed. But the margin for error was always not more than 2. And if you have 2, you may be sweating it out when playoff selection time comes. But at 10-2, Ole Miss will have gotten itself in a position, and they'll have either a road win against LSU or a home win against Georgia.